Alright guys, so this is everything that the Saturn II comes with. We get a couple masks, we get a spatula, we get a plastic spatula. So this one's to scrape your models off the plate. This one's actually to go into the tub and check if anything's stuck there. We get some filters, some gloves, and some extra parts, snippers, a thumb drive, and this is how you're going to bring the files in, and there should be the slicer and some useful user information, things like that. So we got the power supply adapter, pretty good size. It is a 24 volt, 5 amp, 120 watts. And then we got the corresponding plug, depending on where you live, which we have the US type here. So here's something really cool, and this is a filter, specifically a carbon filter that goes into the machine right here. There's a little plug here that you got to take out, and this will plug in like that with USB, and this will help neutralize the vapors with the activated carbon cartridge that's inside while you're printing, which should keep as far as particles and smells to a minimal. We got a little helpful card here that shows us how to level the build platform, and you actually use this card, and we'll do that here in a second. And we got our quick start guide, which has the parameters here, all the parts of the printer, things like that. So yeah, quite useful to look over and to familiarize yourself. But the cool thing is, resin printers are quite simple in their nature and are not too hard to figure out. But we're gonna go through the full process here of getting the printer set up and also the slicing software. But before we do anything else, let's take a closer look at the Saturn II. So you guys can see here sitting on the desk, it is a pretty large printer. You can see my hand here. So yeah, this is a 10-inch screen, which is an 8K printer, and the detail that we can project off of these screens have really detailed prints. So I'm pretty excited to see what the Saturn II here will produce. But let's go here to the top. On here we just have a cap. It is plastic. We got a guide here for the lead screw. No bearing, just kind of goes into there. Huge linear rails, and there's 2 of them with large bearings, and that's great to see. This should be very stable, as this is our only moving part, which is up and down. This is a nice chunky aluminum. We can also see how this bolts to the rail, very sturdy and very strong. So yeah, this is great because as it goes up and down, it has to pull off the film, so there shouldn't be any kind of fluctuations as far as how robust everything is here. As we go down, we can see the tub. It's quite large. I like how thin it is. We do have a max line there in the back, and you don't want to overfill it because when your plate goes down, the resin will rise. We got a couple knobs here that release it, and they do come out completely. So for that reason, you probably want to pull them out, because if you flip this upside down, they'll fall out. There's 2 little handles on each side to grab it, which is great. And if we look at the bottom, we can see that it has little feet here as bolts, and those are actually also used to line it up here with the base. But what's great is that when you set this down, it's not going to sit on the film because it has like little feet. And this is the film here, which is replaceable, as you guys can see those bolts. Now there is a protector here that we do need to take off, and we'll do that in a second. But yeah, you can set this down without worrying that your film is getting dirty underneath. Going back here to the base, we got another protector. Let's go ahead and peel this off, which reveals the ultra large 10-inch screen, which is a monochrome 8K display. So pretty incredible stats. We'll see how this translates into the print. And also we do have UV lights underneath that glow with a Fresnel lens, which keeps the light moving up in one direction instead of scattering it. So yeah, this technology has been out for a while, but is carrying on with the new printers, which is great to see. We do have a little sticker here that says to release film regularly, as there could be some piercing and you won't notice, and it will go into the screen here and damage it. And they're talking about this felt film here to check once in a while, make sure it's not leaking. As you print on this, you could pierce through it eventually, and that'll cause this part here to get ruined. So naturally you would have to replace it if you have, severe wear or scratches that are too heavy, or it's just stained too much with whiteness. And also, if you do have a failed print, it's quite important to clean out the tub completely, as if you don't, there might be something sharp in there left, and when you go to printing again, you'll puncture the film and again have an issue. So yeah, just some precautions here, but nothing to worry, just to keep in mind. So let's keep looking at the printer. We have the base here, which is completely metal, and everything below that is plastic. The lead screw here comes out from the bottom. We also have the optical sensor here for the Z-axis home. The USB port that we saw, which the filter plugs in, and it's quite important not to plug anything else in there because this uses a different voltage. It's actually 24 volts that comes out of here specifically for the filter. So make sure you don't use this for anything else. Going here to the front, we can see we got a pretty large screen, ELEGOO logo. Pretty interesting design here. Not too crazy about it, to be honest. This blue here is actually not blue, it's chrome. It just has a protector on here, so let's go ahead and peel that off. That looks much better. There's actually another protector here, but you might want to keep this one on as long as you can to preserve the screen, as you will be touching this a lot, so it's kind of nice that it has some kind of protection. But you can do whatever you want. I prefer to keep mine on in the beginning, and as it wears off, I can peel it off. So yeah, here we have a big power button, and it's actually a physical button. Now what I don't see up front is a USB port for our thumb drive, and it's probably somewhere in the back, and I would have loved to see it somewhere here. Yeah, speaking of that, if we go to the right side, we got venting here, and there's our port there towards the back. So you can also see the feet. It kind of stands off the table a good amount, and there is some rubber down there so it doesn't slide around easy. To the left side of the printer, we don't have much here except for some venting, and this is all plastic. Going to the back, we can see how the channel here, as the Z-axis, looks very clean. And then on the back here, we got some stats, the name, the size of the machine, the power rating, 24 volts, 4 amps, and the weight, 11 kilograms. Pretty chunky for the resin printer. And in the back here is where we're going to plug in the power input from the adapter. So you guys can see there's a few bolts here, 4 of them looks like, and this cover should pop off. So I'm going to take this off and we'll see what's behind that. All right, so the little bolts are out. Let's go ahead and see what's behind here. And yeah, it's maybe a little hard to see because of the lighting here, but we have a main board. I can see it is an ARM processor, and yeah, everything looks really nice and tidy. We've got our motor here for the Z-axis, but yeah, ELEGOO does a great job here, guys, with all of their designs and electronics, as they are expertise in this. And the Saturn here looks to be extremely well built and put together, and we can even see here it says 8K on the board. So yeah, very cool. All right, so that was a nice little sneak peek. Let's put this back. And I got this thing flipped over on its side, and this is what's underneath. So not too much to see here. Again, there's rubber feet, actual rubber, so it does grip well. And yeah, let's stand this thing back up. So the last thing we haven't looked at is the build plate, and you guys can see it's quite large. There's another film under here. Gives you a little tip there to press firmly on the build plate when tightening the bolts. It's talking about these 2 large bolts, and we're gonna go through the leveling process here in a minute. And you guys can see how heavy duty everything is. So this is all metal. It literally slides right into here. Then you got this really large knob here that tightens it up. And I love how large the knob is, as it's very easy to just tighten it up without, struggling, as you do need it decently tight so it's all sturdy. So yeah, that's the basics of the printer here. We have the cover next to it, and it's still wrapped. It's got a nice contour design that matches this, and there is a lip here that it seals, which is great. And what's interesting, that on the back of the cover there's a little opening here that looks like it's for a fan, or maybe additional filtration or exhausting maybe of the fumes from the printer. If you were going to run this continuously in a closed environment, they kind of give you a hole here for an option to suck the fumes out. So that's a really nice detail for someone that will care about that. All right, so let's go ahead and plug our adapter in. We're going to insert the AC power cord into the brick, and then from the brick, this is the output to the printer. And it looks like the whole thing is about 4 feet long, maybe 5, but should be enough to get you to the outlet. Yeah, I would say actually 5, maybe even closer to 6 feet. And if we flip around to the back, this is where we're going to plug it in. All right, so let's hit our power button. Well, actually, before we do that, I'm going to take this off just in case. And it's this large button here. All right, there it goes. It's powered on. We can see the logo. And the fan started up, so it does make noise as it's on. Not super loud, but there is a nice hum to it. So the first thing we want to do is level the build plate, and this is actually simpler than it looks, and it does go through all the steps here on this paper. Alright, so I just made a small error as I forgot to push the record button and got quite far into the video explaining everything and just realized that I was not. So if it seems a little off, I do apologize. I will try to go through this very carefully. So I think where we left off here is we're leveling the bed, and what you want to do is use this. Obviously it says here everything, how to do it, and it's pretty simple, but I'll explain it here. Also, there are some nuances that you should know about the actual leveling process and the offset mostly. Yeah, I got the Z-axis here raised pretty high, and if we go to tools and manual, we can raise that and lower it. So actually I need to probably lower it a little bit here. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your build plate on there, and you need to peel the protector. Don't forget to do that. And it just inserts into this hole, into the arm. So yeah, and then you can just gonna tighten it on the top with this big nut, or knob should I say. So then we're gonna grab our large wrench, and we're gonna release these 2 bolts. And mine were actually loose. And you guys saw when I undid that, the spring fell down. And the way this bed works, it's spring operated, and so it's going to push onto the bottom and compress a bit, which is fine, but it also rotates back and forth. So you're going to have to orientate that also. So now we can click on home, and what that's going to do is going to go down into the paper here. And home is preset by the factory where, you know, it will not damage anything as long as you got these loose. So make sure you do that before you do anything else, is loosen those bolts. So you guys see how it compresses? There we go. And mine actually makes noise there. Normally it does not. I turned that on, and we'll go through those settings in a second. So what you want to do is make sure your card is completely underneath the build plate, and you want to try to orientate this pretty close. And you're going to tighten it right here. And when you do tighten it, you want to put a little bit of pressure around it. That way it stays pretty flat all around. So I'm going to tighten the side one there, and then the front one, and then kind of snug them up a little more. So don't put too much pressure down as we have the screen there. And definitely don't forget to unscrew these before you do anything else, as you can damage the screen if you put too much pressure onto it. Okay, so now that's tight, what I like to do is go here and change this to 0.1 millimeters and go up once or twice, probably twice, let's see, maybe 3 times. And our card should cut loose there. So we went 0.3, and what we can do is go to every corner of the build plate and see if it feels even. And this is how you'll know that your build plate is pretty level on all sides, is that the card feels the same friction everywhere. So yeah, mine is perfect here. And that's pretty much how you set the level of the build plate. Now, one thing that you might want to do when you start printing is if you have elephant foot or you're too close to the film, you want to raise this up. What you could do is just manually add more paper, and that would be kind of manually do it, or you could do it in the screen, and that is going to be, if we go back here, the set to 0. Now the way that works is that you set it whatever offset you want. So right now we're actually 0.3 up compared from home. So let me just pull this card out, and we'll click home again, and you'll see that it'll drop back down to where home was. So this is where it's going to start printing always, unless you set the Z offset. So let's say I want it 0.2 higher than the regular home. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push that twice, which I did. So it did raise 0.2, and then I'm going to hit the set to 0 button, and that's going to save that position, which is 0.2 higher than the home. So we'll confirm that. And now every time the printer starts printing, it'll raise itself 0.2 before it starts. So the confusing part is that if I go back to manual here and I home it, it'll actually go back to home, not the 0.2 that I set it at. So keep that in mind. It only raises the 0.2 that you raised when it starts printing, not when you home it. So when you home it, it'll always go back to its original home, no matter what set to 0 set off. I'm going to set this back to the home position. So I'm just going to click set to 0 where it's at. And now it's going to remember this position as the starting point when you start printing. So hopefully that made sense. It wasn't too confusing, but yeah, there's a little nuance there that could be a little confusing, especially for people that don't know how that works. All right, so let's raise this thing up quite a bit higher. And we'll put our tub in, which I already peeled the protector underneath. Go up a little more here. So this should just drop in, as it got little dimples in the base that the bolts go into. It's really easy to line it up, and we'll put the bolts in on each side to secure it. And let's go up a little bit more here. And for the next part, I did install the charcoal carbon filter here on the side where it plugs in, and it's already all put together. And what we did, let's pull it apart. There's a cartridge in there that's carbon, and that was separately bagged, which we just unbagged and slid in there. And there's a little filter that goes there. And then we just put it together. And this will help filter out the vapors so it doesn't smell so bad and just clean the air. And you guys can see the USB port there will plug in into the base there. And we do have a light that lights up, indicating that it is working. And you can feel it as there's a little fan under there that spins and circulates the air. All right, so for the next part, let's go through this menu here. But before that, I'm gonna go ahead and plug in the USB thumb drive that was included back here on the side on the right, and it does glow. And hopefully you guys can see that. But yeah, this is our main menu. So in the tools, we had the manual, which we went over, and that's where we go up and down and home. Exposure, this is going to test our screen and UV lights. So if we click on next, there's going to be an image that's put out there. and you guys can see it there. So our LCD screen is working, as we can see the image, and the UV lights are shining through. So everything is working, which is great to see, and that's how you can test, make sure everything is operational. If we go back, here we have set to 0. This is where we talked about the leveling. Once you get it to where you want it, the offset, you click that and it will start printing from that offset. We got the stop button, which will stop everything. The clean tank, if we click that, what that's going to do is open up the whole screen completely to the UV light. And the reason it's called clean tank is you can cure the rest of the resin that's in here and then kind of peel it off. I don't normally recommend doing that, as if it's too thin, it could fuse to the film and then be really hard to take off, and you can kind of scratch up and ruin the film. So yeah, it's better just to pour out extra that you have back into your resin container through a strain filter that they provide. But if you do need to use this feature, they do have it here. And yeah, that's everything for the tools. So here we have system, and it's going to be information about the printer. And this is where you turn on that sound that you guys heard when it peeps. So I'm going to leave mine on. We got languages, so it's Chinese or English, and it goes through the two. We got service, how to contact the company through Facebook, website, and email. And that is it, guys. So it's quite simple on the navigation here for the Saturn II. So here we have the print button, and that's going to read our USB thumb drive that we plugged in. So actually that's not how it starts, as I already got this far. This is how it starts. So you got like files, and you can click on the file to open it, and it kind of goes into the sub file. To go back, it's a little confusing. You have to click on the file that you clicked on. So if you just click this, it'll go back to the main menu. So you have to click on the file to go back to the front of the filing thing. So it's a little confusing, but once you click around, you'll get used to it. So on the first one here, it does say models, printables, whatever. And we do have some rooks that they included that we can start with. So yeah, that's the typical thing for ELEGOO there. But you know, they're quick and pretty detailed prints that we can do our first print as our test. So at this point, we're pretty much ready to print. Now, there's a few precautions here that you want to keep in mind, as you want to be in a pretty ventilated area. I'm in my garage right now, so I got some airflow going. And also protect your hands with gloves that they include, and wear a mask so you don't have to expose yourself to breathing fumes. Now, different resins will, you know, be more harmful than others, so keep that in mind. And if you do use alcohol also for cleaning up the resins, that could be very smelly and quite harmful to your health. So yeah, just keep in mind the safety precautions that comes with resin printing. Now with that said, we're going to be using ELEGOO resin today, which is their special 8K, which this printer is, and it is a water washables, and these are my favorite because these are the least smelly and easiest to deal with after you're done printing, as it only takes water to clean it up. Now there's some, you know, pluses and minuses to it, depending, you know, on what you're looking for and things like that. But yeah, again, just keep safety in mind, as all this stuff is chemicals and you want to be careful with them. So it comes in its own bag. Also, it looks like a little brush, which is really nice, as this could be helpful to clean up the models. And so I'm not putting any gloves on because I'm not going to get in contact with the resin. I'm just going to pour it in there. But once we finish printing, we will definitely put our rubber gloves on and process our print. So yeah, let's go ahead and open it up. And there is a seal we need to cut. Now you do want to make sure this is mixed up pretty well, and not too violently, just kind of flop it around a bit. Yeah, if you shake it too violently, you'll put a lot of air in it, and that could, you know, be a little bit too foamy or whatever. But yeah, just kind of mix it up. Mine was kind of moving around quite a bit, so it should be fine. Yeah, all we're going to do is just pour it into our tub here, and we can pour it straight on the plate. It'll just roll off, or we can just do this either way. And you guys can see this is a gray color here, more like a darker gray. And you don't want to go over the max line that we saw earlier, so I'm going to stop probably about right here, and we can add some to it if we need more. Looks like we're pretty much ready, guys. So let's go ahead and click the play button here for the rooks, and that should start it up, and there it goes. All right. And our first layer has started, and it looks like there's exactly 1,000 layers that it's going to go through. So let's go ahead and unwrap our cover, and we're going to set it over the printer, and it falls on in its own little groove here, and that's going to seal up the whole thing and really keep the fumes to a minimum. And you guys can see it's quite large here on the top, as it is a pretty large print volume, which, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned yet, it's 219 wide, 123 deep, and 250 millimeters tall. So yeah, very nice large build volume. So we are on our third layer, and the first however many layers are longer exposure, and then it goes faster. So yeah, let's go ahead and check out the screen while it's printing. All right, not sure how much you guys can see, but hopefully something here. So we can see the layer that we're on right now. On the top, it projects a picture. We got the percentage bar at 1%. We got the file name. It is a CTB file. We got how much longer it's gonna take, which is 3 hours and 13 minutes. Time passed, which is 4 minutes. And the layer that we're on, which is 6 out of 1000. So here we have hot button, stop, pause, and more settings. So if we click that, we can see we can adjust our bottom layer, which there's 5 of them at 30-second exposures, and then everything after that is 2.5 seconds. And we also can adjust our exposure offset, and you can actually change that by clicking on it and adjusting that. So yeah, everything looks pretty good, and it's quite simple, guys, not too complicated here with resin printing. Most of your things are done in the slicer when you slice the print. So one thing that I do want to check is the pause button, and that's to see if the build plate will raise up so we can see if our print's stuck or not underneath. All right, so we're printing away, and we're at layer 53, looks like. So yeah, pretty quick here. It's only been, what, 15 minutes since we started. So let's go ahead and take the cover off. And wow, not too much smells. I think this carbon filter here is doing extremely well. That's actually surprising how low odor it is. I mean, there is still odor, but it's not bad at all. All right, so if we click this pause, what I'm expecting it for it to go up so we can see what's underneath the plate. So let's go ahead and click it. And it is going up, which is a good sign. And going up actually a really good amount. And I don't know if you guys can see or not, but we do have 2 rooks stuck there underneath. You can see the round pieces there. So yeah, very cool. So it looks like the pause button works perfect. So if we push play, it should continue printing where it's paused from. So yeah, I'm very glad that they have this, as you know, if you're just starting out or beginning to print, you know, this could be quite helpful to see if your print has been stuck to the plate and everything's good. Because you don't want to, you know, print a pretty large print and then find out that, you know, an hour or 2 later that didn't even stick. So yeah, very cool way to check if everything's good. So I'm going to continue to print this out, and we'll see how the rooks come out. All right, so our rooks are done, and you guys can see them kind of there hanging. And on the screen here, it says it took 3 hours and 26 minutes. And we'll confirm that, and goes to the main menu. Now for the next part, what we need to do is remove the models and clean them. So there's a couple ways you can do this. The best way would be to have a wash and cure station, which is great because you can just have a more seamless processing. Now if you don't have a station or don't want to invest in one, you'll need some kind of water to wash. Since this is water washable, we just have normal water, and a pan to work in. Scrape the models off, kind of, you know, keep your area clean. You got a spatula here. I'm using a different one. Our little brush, and you might need this to check, make sure nothing's down there. But most likely, as long as the print has printed, we're good. So let's go ahead and put this glove on. And so coming in contact with the resin is not a good idea. So make sure you wear protective gear and also wear your mask. All right, so we're gonna loosen the bolt here, and this should just slide right out, and you guys can see our rooks are beautifully stuck on there and look great. And I'm gonna go straight down into this pan, and it looks like we got a pretty good distance between the bed and the model. Let's see how easy it pops off. So I'm just gonna grab the spatula and try to get in there and kind of hit it. Maybe we'll go a little sideways just in case so it doesn't fly away. I'm gonna try to put the edge into it. All right, so that one flew away. Not a huge deal. So they are stuck on really good, so maybe going up a little bit on the offset would help release a little better. And there we go, that one came off a little bit more elegantly, falling right into the pan. So yeah, and you guys can see everything looks nice and clean here. So we can just put this back onto the printer, tighten it up, and we're ready for our next print. And we have our rooks off, so let's go ahead and drop them into the water and get them start to shed that extra resin around for the cleanup. Now you want to be somewhat careful with these because they're pretty soft when they come straight out of the printer. Meaning that if you push too hard or scratch too hard on it, it'll show up in the print. So normally what I like to do is kind of just shake them around like this, and that works pretty good. If you want to, you can use this brush. It is pretty soft, but it can still leave marks, so be very careful. If there's like fine details that you want to wipe over just to make sure that they'll show up really good. But to be honest, these things look really good without even needing too much wash. As you guys can see, they're quite detailed and sharp looking, even with those letters there on top. So yeah, however, you gotta wash them in water. The better you wash them, the better they'll look. Or rinse them and then dry them. And you want this to dry naturally, slowly, just air dry. Don't put them in the sun right away when they're wet, because they will get burnt and you'll have like all these white stains all over it, burnt marks. And you don't want to really cure them in the sun anyways. Just kind of cure them in a shady place near a window or something, but not direct sunlight. And after a little while, they'll cure, be really nice to the touch, and start to harden up to the point where you can handle them much more rougher. Now again, if you get a wash and cure machine, that will make your life much easier, especially for the cleanup, as the water twirls in there and it really cleans them well. And also the UV lights will cure them much quicker, and you can use them quicker. Now you do still have to air dry them before you cure them, or they'll have the same burn marks. In any case, yeah, so I'm just gonna wash these and let them cure. And in the meantime, let's jump to the slicer. We'll slice our own models and we'll see how those come out. All right, so here we are at the computer and I got the thumb drive plugged in. Let's go ahead and open it up. So we got a few files here. We got a PDF of the manual in digital form, and kind of goes over all the basics here, everything included, how to level the bed. So yeah, basically the manual in digital form, and also here how to get the slicer going, which is quite useful. So the next folder we got the Rook model. So we do have an STL file, which is the 3D file that you would use to slice a model, and then our CTB file of the Rook, which is what we printed. The next thing we have the G-code for the machine parameters. Normally they're preset in the slicer, but you do have a G-code here just in case you want to use another slicing other than, let's say, the Cheeto box here. The next folder we got, which is the slicing program, and it works with Linux, Mac, and Windows. So since I have Mac, I'm going to click on that, and it's a DMG file. Open that up, and all I got to do is drag the Cheeto box to the applications, and it's going to install it. There we go. And now it is installed. I'm going to exit all this out, and here it is. Let's open it up. So it looks like there is a new version, but we're going to skip that, and I'm going to minimize it here to our window. All right, so it looks like I can't minimize it enough to fit everything in, but in any case, I think this should be good right here. So first thing you want to do is click on the settings here, pretty large button. This is where we can choose our printer. So it's on default right now, so we need to click on this plus button, and here's all the printers that are available in Cheeto Box, which by the way is a great slicing program. So we're going to click on ELEGOO and go down until we can find our Saturn 2. Here we go. I'm going to click on that, and there's a little picture of it here to confirm. I'm going to click OK, and now it's going to load all the settings for that printer. So including all of these pretty detailed parameters that are preset. So here we have G-code, where you can program it to do certain things in the beginning and end, and also advanced lets us control our light output, anti-aliasing on and off. It is on 3. I'm just going to leave everything the way it is. We have tolerance compensation, bottom tolerance compensation, and print time compensation. So yeah, you can play around with all these settings and see what works best, and especially here in the print. So yeah, that's pretty much basically it. And we can see here our resolution, which is quite impressive. And this makes it an 8K printer. And our size here of 218 by 123 by 250. So yeah, quite large build volume for a resin printer. So we're done here. So I'm going to exit this out, and you guys can see our plate there. So let's go ahead and throw something in, and we'll do something simple like the Eiffel Tower. So it is automatically selected, and it's going to be here on the right side. You can see it says Eiffel Tower. If you add more models, there's going to be more lists here, and you can select them all, deselect them, delete them. Well, let me just show you really quick, guys. So if I add a bin sheet there, you can see that now I can select between the two. But if I want to select them all, I'll click this button here, and now they're all selected and move together and do what we want. And let's say we don't want the bin sheet, we can deselect all and go back to it and delete it straight from here. So that's how you manage that. But the main functions are here on the left. We got move, which is going to give us these arrows. We can move it like this, or we can just type it in here with coordinates X, Y, and Z. You can put on plate, center. So if I click on center, it's going to go straight to the middle. We got rotate, which we can rotate our model in any direction. We got more options here. We got scale, Again, you can drag it to scale or enter it here. The ratio is locked, or you can stretch it in any direction. Or I really like this button, which is called scale to fit, which is exactly what we want to do here. And if we click that, it's going to put out the maximum. Well, actually almost the maximum. If we look over here, we can see it's 237. So let's go ahead and push this thing to, let's say 249, as we might need a little extra room on the top to move up and down. So the reason sometimes you don't want to print the maximum height is because if you think about it, if you print the maximum and the z-axis can't go up anymore, what will happen is you won't be able to get your model out. So because this model is just the tip there on the top, we can easily slide this out of the tub without hitting the bottom. So the point is that if your model was on the edge and it went all the way up on the edge, you wouldn't be able to slide it out. You would have to pull the tub out together with the model somehow, to even get it out. So yeah, hopefully that made sense. That's why they don't let you scale all the way to the 250. But yeah, that's pretty much your basic controls here. And you got mirror. So some more good stuff here is on the top, where you can do auto layout, which could be useful if you have a lot of small things. You can also hollow out a model. So if you have a solid model, you can hollow it out to save resin. And also dig hole, which is very useful to punch holes in the model to drain the resin out. Then we got our view navigation over here. And all the way to the right here, we got our supports tab. And if we click on that, you can generate supports with all these parameters. So the easiest way, if you don't want to mess with any of it, just click on plus all and it will generate supports for the whole model itself. So this will take a little bit of learning to do, but once you figure it out, it's not too hard. As you guys can see, it auto-generated all the supports. And you can delete supports if you don't want them. Let's say you don't want these here. So we're going to click down here on minus or remove support. Then we're just going to click on what we don't want and click remove, and it will remove them. Simple as that. But that's how the supports work, and there's a lot of adjustments here for top, middle, bottom, and the raft. So yeah, quite a bit to play with. But for this print, we're not going to use support, so I'm just going to remove all here on the bottom, and we'll go back, and the model goes back to where it was. So yeah, not too hard to use overall, but as you start, using supports and printing more complicated models, you will have to kind of learn how to do all that. But for today, we're just going to slice this Eiffel Tower. So let's click on this huge slice button here. And it's going to generate a preview, and we can see the layers here one by one. It's a little bit laggy. You can autoplay it here. It's still kind of laggy, so my computer can't handle this kind of files. But on down here we can see our exposure and some of the parameters. So everything looks good, and quite important here is how much resin it's going to take, which says 81 milliliters. Quite a bit, as it is a pretty large print. It's going to take 14 hours and 19 minutes to print. So obviously you can speed this up, but this is the maximum time that most any print will take, because this is the full height of the volume. So it doesn't really matter how much you put on the build plate. What matters is the height, and that's the time. So this is the maximum time of any print that you can print on this printer with these settings, the exposure times. So let's say if you wanted to print a bunch of figurines and whatnot else on the bottom plate, and it's only an inch tall, I mean, it's going to take a couple hours for all of them. A huge plus for the resin printer, as you can print very small little things all over the build plate, and it won't take long at all. So yeah, once you're happy with everything, you're going to click on the save button here, and we can save it straight to our thumb drive. So you guys probably can't see, but it's writing the file down there. All right, and now it's finished, and it is in our thumb drive. If we open that up, we can see it right here. It says Eiffel Tower.ctb. And now we can go to our printer and print it out. So yeah, hopefully this little quick overview was helpful with slicing the model. All right, so let's talk about the cleaning process. And what's great is it's not that complicated or very hard to clean up water washables. Again, it's because you just use regular water. So I'm finished printing, and I popped my last print off, went ahead and washed the plate with water. Very easy. You just rinse it, and that's exactly what you're going to do with the tub. But we do still have some resin in there that we need to save or recycle or put back into the bottle. And you don't want to just throw it away, and sometimes you'll have more or less left over, so you want to save it for next time. Now the only thing is you want to pour it back through a strain filter. So let's go ahead and loose the tub, and we want to pull the pins out completely. Grab the tub. Hopefully you guys can see on one of the edges there is a pour spout right here, and this is where we're going to pour it out. So you might want to use a funnel, because if you just do this, it's going to pour all over the place, but I'm going to go ahead and attempt it here. And we're just going to pour it through the filter, and then out the filter is going to go into the bottle. So we're going to try to get as much out as we can, and you guys can see that we do have some chunks inside the tub from the last print, and I kind of suspected that because I did have some pieces come apart on the print because it was so thin and fragile. But yeah, so we just have a very small film in there, you guys can see maybe, and you can use the clean tank and make this solid, but if you're going to do that, I would recommend leaving more in there than that way you can peel it all off. I'm not going to risk it because it's easier just to clean this up and then to try to use UV rays to solidify it. So yeah, now we recycled our resin and we still have some more for next time. So I'm going to go quickly rinse this off. Alright, so you guys can see the tub is clean. It's going to be a little hazy as you use it. It's going to become more hazy, and this is when you will have to eventually replace the film, which is part of the maintenance on a resin printer. Yeah, as simple as that. We're all cleaned up and ready for our next print. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to pour this out and clean it all up. And I'm talking about the resin, as the plate itself is really easy to clean, obviously. But if you do want to have a resin sitting in here because you're going to print in a day or two or a week, it's okay as long as, you know, you keep it in a place where it won't harden. The cover on top, protecting from UV rays. The only thing is after a few days, you might have to come in there and mix it all up, as it will start separating the resin itself with the different polymers inside. So, all right, guys, so these are all the prints that we printed, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed, as I was wondering how 8K would do, as 4K is already really good, but 8K definitely takes it to the next level with resolution, and you can really tell in the finer details. But before we take a closer look, I just want to mention that I did not pre-adjust anything or try to modify much of anything. I just printed it as it is. So light exposures, all the settings that ELEGOO gave us is what we used. So this could definitely be improved as you adjust those parameters, and so keep that in mind as we look at these prints. So let's take a closer look at the rooks. They're both the same. Let's just grab one here, and we'll try to zoom in as much as we can, as there is lots of details. So we can see the lettering. It's ultra sharp, and it says printed in 3 dimensions. So what's cool about these rooks, there's a helix going down with some stairs also going around. It might be a little hard to see. You can see the stairs there and the helix inside right there. So yeah, everything is super sharp and super clean. And even on this lettering here where it says Saturn 2, it's just very nice and sharp and smooth, and you guys can see how nice and smooth the walls are. So we did have a little bit of layer peeling here on top, not too severe, but other than that, it's pretty much perfect, I would say. So yeah, even the bottom looks great, and this is probably the best rook or rooks that I've ever seen. So here we have a little test print by Soraya Tech. You can see it says there. And this is just the different parameters there that you can check and adjust your printer. So we can see the 0.15 is clean in there. So yeah, everything seemed to be pretty on spot as far as the calibration goes. So lots of detail, and even our overhang here, the arch, looks really good and clean underneath. And here we have a box that kind of tore off with the supports here as I started touching it and cleaning it up. And the thing to note here is that this thing is see-through. Now let's see, maybe I can get a light here so you guys can see that it's completely see-through, which is quite incredible. And there's a very, very fine mesh in there. Let's see if I can line it up just right. There we go. You guys can kind of see it there. So yeah, pretty incredible and super impressive of what this printer can do and how small it can print with perfection. So all of our other models are larger, and some of them don't have too much detail, but just interesting, like this bear here. And I printed this for my wife as she wants to use this as part of a display gift for like baby shower, stuff like that. So yeah, very cute little bears. Yeah, what's great about resin printing is you can print this kind of stuff out without any kind of supports or anything involving retractions or anything like that. So it comes out very clean and just a really nice print. And even though this thing was scaled up, as far as the layer lines, they're almost impossible to see. But the model does have polygons that you can kind of see because of the scaling. But yeah, beautiful print here. Turned out excellent. Here we have something more unique. All sculpture inside of sculpture inside of sculpture. So it goes 5 times in. So yeah, pretty cool and unique also print. Again, very unique and would be hard to make. But for the resin printer here, not a problem. No supports, no anything. Now on this print, there are some lines here and there. I suspect that the print was sticking too hard to the film. Yeah, there's some adjustment that needs to be made for sure, depending on what you're printing. But overall, it looks good. It's just the larger, more solid surfaces seem to have some lines in them here and there. So yeah, I think maybe exposure time needs to go down a bit. So there is a little need of adjustment. Here we have a really detailed print. Let's see if we can get closer to this guy. Lots of detail on this one, and let's see, make sure I'm in focus here. Yeah, great print, as you guys can see, and it is hollowed out, so it's empty. I did put the plug in there, kind of messed it up a little bit, but still worked. And yeah, if you guys look at the detail on this face, this hair, pretty incredible print. And this is what 8K looks like when you throw a bunch of detail at it. It delivers. And on this print, there's also no supports or anything, so yeah, it's very clean and pretty incredible what you can print. So here we have another print that's impossible to print on anything else but a resin printer, as it's a bunch of web of this polygon, whatever this thing is. And I think it's supposed to be like a neuron is what it's called. But yeah, this really shows the strength of a resin printer and what it can do. So this was the bottom, and it stuck very well, as you guys can see. And yeah, everything's pretty good. There was a couple places where, there we go, like it stretched and broke. And I'm not sure if that's when I was cleaning it or while it was printing. So yeah, overall it looks really good and quite clean and a beautiful print again. So the next print we got here is pretty incredible, as this is, I guess, a flower of sorts, and it is hollowed out in the back, as you guys can see. It looks like something got on it here. In any case, yeah, it's basically a bunch of petals, and they're pretty thin, and they get smaller and thinner as they go to the inside, so it's like a flowery thing. But the symmetrical look of this thing is just hypnotizing. The little hole here goes through to the backside, so yeah, it almost looks like you can make a fountain out of it or something. Water coming out the top and flowing out the petals. So yeah, very cool, and lots of detail here with lots of petals. Pretty incredible print, and this printer did an excellent job here printing this print here. Alright, so as you guys can see so far, everything looks great. For the last print, we got the Eiffel Tower. Now I did kind of mess this thing up as I was cleaning it, as it is really fragile around the railing, and yeah, I should have been a little more careful, so I broke the railing off. It was fine in the beginning. Yeah, we can see the bottom here, kind of chipped off a little bit, prying it loose. I do have a little bit of an elephant's foot still, so need to go up just a little bit. We did have a little bit of warpage. Maybe you guys can see it's kind of pulling back as it's drying, and that could be more because of the water washable resin. But as far as detail, hopefully you guys can see, even the railing, all the railing is there. It's just some of it's broken from washing it and curing it. All the way to the top, you can see right through it there. So even on those very fine ones up there, it's also see-through. But yeah, excellent detail for this printer again. And this is the full height of 250 millimeters that this printer can do, which is quite tall for a resin printer. So yeah, overall I'm really impressed with the Saturn II, as the resolution is incredible and you get a very good sized build volume to print a lot of interesting things like figurines and whatnot else that you'd want to do with the ability to have a lot of detail in it. And so ELEGOO continues to push the boundaries on resin printers, and I'm very happy to see that we do have lots of options for more budget resin printers that are getting larger and better, and the ability for just about anyone to get into this hobby. And so if you want to get into really detailed, high quality resin printing, check out this Saturn II. If you're more on a budget, ELEGOO has lots of other choices, something for everyone, and they also do FDM printers with filament printing, which are also great printers. So if you are interested, I'm going to have some links in the description. Check it out, and check out my other ELEGOO videos. I got quite a few, and if you do enjoy videos like this, check out the 3D printer playlist, where I'm sure you'll find something interesting there. And also stay tuned, there's more 3D printing videos coming. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.